respected Thai, dear noble community. On Monday morning, a group of us went up the mountain and had tea and breakfast, lazy morning. And as we reached the road that goes up the mountain at the gatehouse, we encountered the marine layer. And I stopped for a moment and I invited us to get in contact with our fog body. The fog body. Because the marine layer is like the fog that comes in off the ocean here. And it's very thick. And it's almost like a garment that drapes itself over the mountain. And we know that when we breathe, if you live in a cold place, sometimes you can see the fog in your breath. So we know that humidity of the fog is also in our body. And then as we climbed up, we got above the marine layer, slowly, and we sat on the breakfast rock, because I love to hike to. Even when he was in his 70s and early 80s, Tai would go up there to watch the fog and the sunrise. And so we sat on the stone that Tai loved to sit on many times, and drank tea. The sun actually had already come up. I tried to convince the brothers to get up earlier, but that's the best we could do. And now the time had changed, so the sun is getting up an hour earlier. And so, sitting on the stone, we could get in touch with the stone body. It's like the bones of the earth, like the bones in our body. And the hummingbirds were flying by very quickly. And ravens were making lots of noise. And I tried to practice a concentration on non-self, to not see that this body is separate from the stone, from the fog, from the hummingbirds, from the ravens, from my brothers sitting next to me. So as we continue the class from last week, talking about the bodies of the Buddha, I invite you to, when you notice thinking coming up, that's Brother Phap Luu, he's the teacher, he's sitting there, I'm sitting there listening, not to make these kinds of separation, to see that in everything we do, in this Dhamma talk, or sitting meditation, or when we do chanting, that we are not separate. That when we look deeply, that it's only superficially that we have this sense of separation. Like this is Brother Phap Luu's body, this is Brother Min An's body, and so forth. We create these kind of divisions. But when we go back, we see not only through the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, especially living together in the monastery, we eat the same food, we drink, we do activities at the same time. We start to get in touch with this Sanghabody, so something we'll learn about today, right? Something larger than just an individual. And we see that is interpenetrated with everything. And that's not just for the sake of like nice words, but it's for the sake of practicing. Right? Practicing to notice how through our thinking we actually actively cut ourselves off from that experience, and learn how to let go of that thinking and just to flow as a Sangha, in walking, in sitting, in a concrete way. It's so lovely. Today in the walking meditation, I came a little bit late, and the Sangha was already walking down the hill, so I feel like I can just flow into the stream of the Sanghabody going down the hill. It's so easy. And that is the spirit of all these teachings on the bodies of the Buddha. So maybe I try to do a kind of progression as Thai presents it. So we have the Buddha. And the Buddha, we can say the physical body, the human Buddha. And then through his actions of body, speech and mind, he transmits the Dharmabody, the teachings of the Dharma. In the same way that we talk about a writer or an artist, a corpus, right? The corpus of work. The corpus means body. So the speech of the Buddha, the mindful steps of the Buddha, that is the Dharmabody of the Buddha, continuing out. And then we talked about how that Dharmabody had then developed precepts body, 5 aspects, precepts, concentration body, insight body, liberation, and liberation through wisdom. I forget how I said it. Vimukti. Jnana Darshana Kaya. Does anybody remember how I translated it? Liberation through wisdom? Something like that? Body?
The Sanskrit?
The 5th one.
Liberation body due to wisdom.
Liberation body seen through wisdom.
You said due to wisdom.
Due to wisdom, yeah. Liberation body due to wisdom. That's good. So these are the 5 bodies that in the Dharmabody, the teaching body of the Buddha, which is transmitted through generations, we have the aspect, the body, the precepts body, the concentration, samadhi, body, insight, body, aspect of the Dharmabody, the liberation aspect of the Dharmabody, and the liberation due to wisdom. And then we saw that in the Mahayana, so these, we don't have to get caught too much in that there's like a logical progression to this, because this is a historical development. And so as the teachings develop, these teachings on bodies also grew. So the Dharmabody then was joined as well to two other kinds of bodies, the enjoyment or retribution body, and the manifestation body. So we have teaching on the three bodies in the Mahayana. So we have the Dharmabody, retribution body, and manifestation body. And also, we can say in the Mahayana, we can talk about this, the Dharmabody as having these 5 aspects. So this is what we covered last time. Retribution body is the body of merit of the Buddha. All the accumulated actions of the Buddha, which then manifests as virtue. So it's the virtue body, you could say, of the Buddha. But we call it Sambhoga because the Buddha enjoys the fruits of his past action. So Sambhoga means enjoyment. So the retribution body. And that body is not only the body, but it's also the environment. So that teaching helps us to see that where we are in this present moment and what we're experiencing, that is the fruit of our past actions and those of our ancestors and our culture. And not only our body, but also the environment that we find ourselves here at Deer Park, for example, practicing. That's also the fruit of past actions. And manifestation body. So the Buddha had the physical body, right? So in a sense, coming back to the physical human being, the Buddha. But also, for example, in sutras like the Lotus Sutra, we have the Buddha calling back his manifestation bodies. That are millions of them all over, in the sense of the Buddha is not merely this flesh and bone body, but actually is interconnected with all things that are teaching the Dharma in various forms in the present moment, all over the universe. And so wherever in a sense, wherever the Dharma is being taught, that is a manifestation of the Buddha. So, retribution, manifestation, and Dharmabody. And so today we're, so Tai has looked deeply into this progression and has proposed a few, an updated way of looking at the different bodies of the Buddha. So first of all, Tai says, the most important body that we need to include when we talk about the bodies of the Buddha is the human body. If we want to look for the Buddha, we look for the Buddha in a human being. Because over the centuries, the Buddha has been elevated to sometimes to an eternal Buddha, which is just coming down and manifesting, a bit like the tradition of an avatar in Hindu culture. Avatar means to cross over and ava means down. So it's like there's some kind of God, and they take a human form, so they cross over from the God realm into the human realm temporarily in order to, help humanity. And so that aspect of Indian culture also penetrated Mahayana, and so we started to put the Buddha up there somewhere in the 33rd heaven or somewhere where he's just hanging out for all of eternity. And then from time to time he manifests as a human being on this planet Earth. And so we say, oh, that human manifestation is not so important. What is important is that the Buddha is always there. It's because we suffer and we need to have the Buddha there, because somehow we need that comfort. We need the sense that we don't want to cope with the loss of the Buddha and think, oh, the Buddha Shakyamuni is not there anymore to teach, so he's just there, always present, always there to help me in a difficult moment. So there's a need for comfort. The teaching is not enough. I need the Buddha to be always there. But there can be a laziness in that, because instead of practicing going into the Dharmabody and seeing that, oh, here I am, I'm experiencing a human body, and that means that I have the capacity to touch the Buddha inside of me. Instead, we just want to make the Buddha out there, something eternal. And the same is true when we talk about God. God is somebody out there looking after us, rather than going to the deeper teaching, which is to see that God is within us, right? The unconditioned. So Thai is very embracing and tolerant, so Thai wants to include everyone. And he knows that sometimes we are only at that point. We need to think of the Buddha as being some kind of eternally present Buddha that's always there. And okay, if that's where you need to be in a moment of suffering, then okay. But if we want to go deep and really understand the deeper aspect of that teaching, we need to be able to let go of that idea of the Buddha and see that the Buddha manifests in a human being. There's no, the Buddha, it means the Buddha is also impermanent, just like all conditioned things. But that's a great joy, because it means that we can practice to touch awakening in ourselves. We don't have to buy into the belief that we're somehow cut off from, in modern times we cannot possibly touch awakening or enlightenment. So this is why Thai said the most important, you can make any list of bodies that you want, but you have to have the human body of the Buddha. You cannot take away the human body of the Buddha. And especially for those of us who grew up in the West, or Buddhism is not our root tradition, this is important, right? To be able to, this is what Thai, I'm transmitting what Thai said, because if we expect that we can go around just saying, the Buddha is this transcendent being, and you just have to bow to the statue of the Buddha and practice devotion, and that's good enough, it will not go very far. Thai says, when we teach Buddhism in the West, we need to talk about the human body of the Buddha. And so Thai personally, Thai has many books, and many of those books are from Thai's Dhamma talks. And Thai students compiled them and made them into books. But there are books that Thai wrote with his own hand, and one of them is called Old Path, White Clouds. And I showed that in the previous class, and Tai spent months, many months, I think more than a year, in the 80s, writing that book in a room in Upper Hamlet that many people like to stay in. I also stayed in, I think, for a brief while, but when I was before I was an aspirant. And Tai said how he had a little stove there to keep one hand warm while the other hand was writing. And the deep aspiration of Tai in that book was to show that the Buddha was a human being, to be able to bring the Buddha back down from the 33rd or Tushita heaven and come down and see that the Buddha is a human being that also had anger and jealousy, and also had sexual desire, like all human beings, but that he learned to transform those afflictions. And that is a great hope for all of us. So in the Plum Village teaching, the first body of the Buddha is a human body. And we have the Dharmabody. As we've already learned, the teaching of the Buddha, transmitted. So you have the Buddha body, the human body, the Dharma body, and the Sanghabody. And I have not been able to find any reference to the Sanghabody before Tai. It might be there, but I'm pretty sure this is Tai started talking about the Sanghabody, the Sangakaya. I saw there's a Buddha Kaya, Dhammakaya, we need the Sangakaya. And one of the things that Tai is most impressed with about the Buddha is his capacity to build the Sangha. So usually in Buddhism, we honor, we revere the Sangha. Sometimes just the Sangha of monks and nuns. And we forget that, and we take for granted that because the Buddha had enlightenment, taught the Dhamma, well, it just happened like that the Sangha grew up around him. And so what we want is just to get the Dhamma. And if we get the Dhamma, then we also will be able to build a Sangha. And there's some truth in that. But it's also not easy to build a community of practice. So if you read the Vinaya, you get a real window into the human body of the Buddha and the human aspect of the Sangha. The brothers, Brother Min An and many of the Min Yung and many brothers here received the Bhikshu precepts about a month and a half ago. And in order to do that, they had to undergo many months of study of the Vinaya just to start, and then we continue to do that. And so we read about how the precepts came about and how different things happen in the Sangha of the Buddha. That, like for example, one monk who went on a home visit and then his mother pressured him to have sex with his ex-wife in order to produce an heir. Because she said, now you've gone and become a monk. And we don't have anyone to continue the family lineage. And so, because at that time there were no precepts, and that monk that, well, first he didn't want to, but then his mother just kept pressuring him, and so then he eventually did, went off into the forest with her, and so that was the beginning of the precepts. Before that, the Sangha just followed the Buddha and looked to him as an example. And they just knew implicitly that it's not appropriate for a monk to have sexual intercourse. But then that happened. So in Plum village, that's why we always try to send a second body with our brothers, another monk, to go when you go on a home visit. Because you may be surprised what kind of habits come up when you go to visit your family. What's the phrase, like everyone is a Buddha until they go home to visit their family? So suddenly those seeds come up, and then, so that happened to that monk. And so then when he came back to the Sangha, he felt very ill, at ease. He felt uncomfortable. And then he eventually went to the Buddha and he said what happened, and the Buddha chastised him very strongly. He said, how could you think? I've taught many times that sensual desire is an obstacle to the practice. How could you think that this is something you could do as a monk? And so then the first precept came out of that, which is connected to the third mindfulness training in the 5 mindfulness trainings. So the Buddha had a lot of, and then it continued like that. There are many monks who behaved they had different reasons why they joined the Sangha. And so, of course, they say they want to become the Buddha, they want to become enlightened, but actually they get addicted to food or sexual desire or something else that they carry with them. And so then they behave inappropriately. And so if you want to get the more human side of the Sangha, you can read the Vinaya. It's very interesting. And the stories about how the precepts came about. So it's clear that the Buddha didn't have an easy time building the Sangha. Even that he got this deep insight into the nature of things, but actually he had a lot of difficulty building the Sangha. And not only because of his monks and nuns that followed him, but also because of the situation. For example, his homeland underwent a kind of genocide in his later life. A prince who had been treated disrespectfully was so angry that he went back and he massacred many of the tribe of the Buddha. His cousin, who had become a monk, Devadatta, tried to split the community to make all the monks practice more severe precepts, and those monks went and followed Devadatta and caused a disharmony in the community. And all these things caused... I think the Buddha had to practice with those situations. Those are really, really difficult situations. One of the greatest supporters of the Buddha, King Bimbisara of Rajgir, the king of Magadha, was killed by his own son, Ajatasattu. And that son went to meet with the Buddha later on. Imagine that. King Bimbisara was the king who came to the Buddha before his enlightenment and said, I'm so impressed with your presence. I want to give you half of my kingdom. That's when the Buddha was just practicing before he sat under the Bodhi tree. And after King Bimbisara was donated the first piece of land to the Sangha, the bamboo grove in Rajgir. So Even you say, well, the Buddha is perfectly unattached, but I think he felt some kind of warmth around King Bimbisara. I think he felt this is someone who really, understands the Dhamma, understands the practice of virtue. And so I think there's some suffering the Buddha experienced when he heard about what happened to King Bimbisara. And then later on taught the Dhamma to his son who had done that, who had apparently starved his own father to death. So all these things happened in the life of the Buddha and made it difficult for the Buddha to build a Sangha. And if you live in community, then you know that you can feel very light and free and follow your breathing and walk out of the meditation hall in the morning and hear the birds chirping and the beautiful marine layer coming in and out. It's all lovely, but then suddenly you realize you're on washing up and nobody on your team is come to help. Then you hit the reality of building community. This is the real thing, not just the kind of lightness and freedom. So for myself, that's how I practice to cultivate humility. Because I see that I still get irritated. I still, sometimes look at my brothers and, why did he do that? How many times did I tell him? So but I learned to breathe with it, to let go, to be softer, more gentle. Because I see the beauty in building the Sanghabody. We can listen to a bell. Said that the next Buddha will be a Sangha. And so this is what... And through our walking meditation, just showing up for sitting meditation, showing up for the meals, eating together with the Sangha, we build the Sangha. We don't need to be giving a Dhamma talk. We don't need to be doing something important, getting recognition. Sometimes that can be an obstacle. It can be harder to give a Dhamma talk. Because then brothers are harder. They're more afraid to come up to you and say anything. You feel like sometimes there's separation. So as a Dhamma teacher, you have to learn how to practice non-self. And just see, okay, creating opportunities to learn the Dhamma, that's the main thing. It's not about this person. It's how do you transmit the Dhamma? Sometimes it's in a Dhamma talk, but a lot of times it's just sitting and drinking tea. It could be playing volleyball. How do you play volleyball? The other day we were playing volleyball and we weren't keeping any score. It was very interesting. We didn't know how to end it. I think we played for 2 hours and we said, this is the eternal volleyball game. We just keep playing. Everyone was so considerate of each other. They think, well, maybe, they want to keep playing, so I'll keep playing. So, I could feel that energy of love in the volleyball game. It's we don't need to compete or try to win, have this team do better than that team. We just don't keep score. We just keep playing. And we enjoy seeing, how we can support one another, how we can create an energy of siblinghood, of brotherhood and sisterhood on the volleyball court. So these are the kind of things, that's the Dharma. That's learning the Dharma. And that's building Sangha. I really feel deeply that one of the most difficult and greatest things that we can do in life is be a community builder. It's, like Thai, to build a community, like the Plum Village community is so precious. I mean, how? How to build a community as beautiful like as this, and then maintain it and continue it. It's a real jewel. And it takes a lot of letting go of our ego, of our personal preferences, also learning how to take care of our emotions, and learning to see the community, take care of our own body, take care of our Dharmabody, but also learn to take care of the Sanghabody. So it means we need to nourish ourselves with the Dharma as an individual, and we need to take care of our human body with the food that we eat, getting enough sleep, going for a walk every day, having exercise, just taking care of our physical body. We take care of our Dharmabody. We find ways to learn the Dharma. It doesn't mean just reading books or sutras or listening to talks, but mindful walking is a Dharma talk. Your own mindful walking is an experience which is teaching you. Being aware of your feelings in any moment is a Dharma talk. So the Dharmabody is not only just something you read in books. Actually, the books are kind of like a crutch. They kind of help you to support you, but the real Dharma teaching happens in life. But just because we're living doesn't mean that we're learning the Dharma. Does that make sense? So it's in our way of looking, seeing the impermanence of our body, our feelings, and this kind of thing through the different concentrations. Then our body becomes a Dharma teacher. And that is a real living Dharma. So all these bodies need nourishment. That's the main point. When we start to see that these bodies are all the Buddha body, and that because we are also human, that we have these bodies within ourselves, then we try to ask ourselves, well, how can I nourish these bodies? Not just my physical body, because sometimes we just spend all of our time obsessing about the physical body. So we balance. We need to take care of the physical body. So it's not like we just reject the physical body. We need to take care of it, but we also have a Dharma body, we have the Sangha body, and we need to learn how to nourish them. Okay, the continuation body. So the Sangha body can also be a kind of continuation body. So when the son is a continuation of the father, right? And we as Thai students, we are Thai's continuation body. So we learn the Dharma from our teacher, and then we don't just repeat what Thai said, but we put it into practice. We can learn from science, for example, from neuroscience, from psychotherapy, and then we integrate what we've learned into our own practice, and then we continue in our way of breathing, walking, listening, speaking. So this body is emphasizing the aspect of how we continue the Buddha. And not only us, but people anywhere, anyone who, even those who never heard about the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, if there's some kindness, if there's some compassion there, they are a continuation body of the Buddha. They are manifesting the continuation body. And the Buddha is also a continuation body of the Buddhas before. And actually of anyone who's been kind and compassionate and wise. The Buddha is a continuation body. So it's not like the Buddha is the ultimate source of, because the Buddha saw that he is just one of many Buddhas. And the Dhamma that he discovered is an old path that he has cleared away. It's not something that he's invented or created. So we can see the Buddha as a human body is a continuation body, as the Dharmabody is a continuation body, as the Sanghabody is also a continuation body. And so these bodies are a way of looking. So because we're not caught anymore in, when we practice not to get caught in the idea of a separate self. So then we see that these bodies are just aggregates. They're different ways of looking, like a multifaceted jewel. You can look at this side and you see the continuation body. But if you look from this angle, you see the Sangha body. And you look from this angle, you see the Dhamma body. But they're not separate. So, if we see the continuation body, then we feel at ease right away. We don't need to have an eternal Buddha up in some heaven somewhere, because we can see that Brother Min An is a continuation of the Buddha. We can see Jonathan is a continuation of the Buddha. We see Nathan and Mike, everyone in them is a continuation of the Buddha. And so everywhere we look, we see Buddhas in a continuation form. It helps us to see those aspects of kindness, compassion, of awakening in every one of us. And so everyone becomes a teacher. In the same way we see Thai. Sometimes the brothers and sisters, now we give Dhamma talks, and Thai is not giving Dhamma talks in their usual form. And then the people will come up and say, I saw Thai in you when you were speaking. I say, yes, and I see Thai in you when you're listening, right? We see Thai in anyone who has stepped onto this monastery ground is in some way, shape, or form a continuation of Thai. You just step on this ground, you see the calligraphy, I have arrived, I'm home. You become a continuation body of Thai. And it doesn't mean you're a perfect practitioner, but it means in some way you're receiving that stream from the ancestral teachers through Thai's teaching, through the Buddha, and through the ancestral teachers. So this is a way of looking at this stream of all of our ancestral teachers. And if you practice the 5 touchings of the earth, then it's a very beautiful way to see your blood ancestors, your spiritual ancestors, your land ancestors. We touch the earth to our blood ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, our land ancestors, and we see that we are their continuation. And that is not for the sake of theory, but it's for really seeing in every cell of my body, there is my blood ancestors, my parents, my grandparents, going back to tens of thousands, of hundreds of thousands, of millions of years. We have our ancestrals, something like a chimpanzee, something like a burrowing animal, something like a amphibian, and so forth, going back to the ocean, right? We have our fish body in every cell of our body. We have the kind of something like a amphibian body in our body. And so we are a continuation. And so that practice of touching, the earth touching, helps us to realize that, to meditate on that aspect of our body. And then the same with our spiritual teachers. We see that there's a Buddha, but there's also maybe Jesus or Moses or Muhammad or Aboriginal teachers from all over the earth, which have transmitted to us their wisdom, their peace, and we see them within us. Yeah, we see them present. And then our land ancestors, getting in touch with those who've cared for this land. When we look around the earth, sometimes we go to a very wild place and we think, this is totally wild. Like California, when many of the Spanish missions came here, they thought it's just wild. But actually now we know that many of the forest groves were tended like gardens for the acorns of the oak trees and for other kinds of medicinal plants, that what looked like wild had actually been tended for thousands of years. And it's just because of our way, the way of looking of the Spanish missionaries. They could not see how the land ancestors, the native peoples of California, had been taking care of the land already for many, many generations. And that is a pity. And then we come and we make our, like if you go through the Central Valley of California, you see rows and rows of almond trees. And in order to pollinate all those almond trees, we have to bring billions of bees on cars and trucks. Beekeepers who bring their bees around all over the western part of the United States to follow the flower season and pollinate the trees. And so we have we brought our the ancestral lineage from Mesopotamia, which then came to European cultures, a way of subjugating the land and distinguishing between wild and cultivated, creating these kind of constructs. And because of that mental construct, the Spanish missionaries, when they came here, they could not see the beautiful gardens that were already there. They looked just wild. So in reflecting on our land ancestors, that is looking in ourselves and changing our way of looking so that we can see that actually the ancestors have been smiling and taking care of us for many, many generations. Maybe we can listen to a bell. Thai would often say, the ancestors have already prepared everything. For example, when Thai went back to Vietnam in 2005, for the first time after 39 years, it seemed impossible. There were, I think, more than 100 monastics. I think I was the youngest monk to go on that trip. And there were during that trip there were many hundreds of lay friends who joined. And it was so difficult. Everything was difficult. The food was difficult, the housing was difficult, the secret police made everything difficult. The government would try to block, for example, we organized, not me, but the elder brothers and sisters organized an event for young people in Hanoi. And when the government heard about it, they declared that it was a special. They made all the schools in Hanoi go on a field trip outside of the city. So when we came to the wake up, young people's practice day, it was just old women with black teeth because they were afraid, a lot of fear. I think I remember when Thai arrived in the airport of Ho Chi Minh City, there were more than 10,000 people there to greet Thai. When the president of Vietnam comes to Saigon, maybe there are 100 people. So there was a lot of fear. And that fear manifested as obstruction and intimidation. But somehow the trip happened and the Sangha was able to visit all these ancestral temples and the root temple of Thai in central Vietnam, and Phung Boi, the fragrant palm leaves hermitage that Thai created as his first attempt to create a community in the highlands of Vietnam, central highlands. So it seemed impossible, but somehow it happened. And Thai's insight over and over again was, the ancestors have already prepared everything. Thai just has to follow. And sometimes in our lives, we are so frustrated, we feel like we just have obstacles in our way. But if we just let go of what our object is, our aim, and practice aimlessness, you might see that actually everything is already prepared. You just have to just take a mindful step. And you have no obstruction. It's only your wanting that thing that makes it so difficult, your idea of happiness. So the continuation body helps us to see that. It helps us to see that we are just continuing what the ancestors have already started. And the ancestors have a lot of compassion. There's a lot of suffering in our ancestors, but there's also a lot of compassion and a lot of wisdom. And that wisdom often doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a face. You read the history book, you hear about the famous people, their faces, but that's just 0.00001% of the reality. It's like a tiny, tiny little sliver of all of the ancestors and their goodwill and their love that they transmit to us. So when you practice signlessness, the concentration on signlessness, you get in touch with that. You see that, beyond words and concepts, actually there's this great, great, immense love, and that is transmitted to us. And all we need to do is just allow it to come in. It's already there. We just remove the anger and the fear and the jealousy from our heart. and it's already there. That's my practice. That's how I try to practice with it. When I have suffering around or some obstacle in my practice or in my relationship and community, I just try to see what am I trying to get? Because that's usually the biggest obstacle. It's not the other person who is the obstacle. It's what my ambition or my desire to get some goal that is making me suffer. And if I just let go, I can just walk in peace, take a mindful step in peace, and the path is already there. So that's a practice of the continuation body. The fifth body is the body outside the body. Yeah, so we already talked a little bit about how it's just through our concepts that we see that this body is me. And I am limited by this body. That is a concept. Actually, if you watch a newborn child, they don't have that concept yet. They're experiencing so many things. Their eyes are wide. They don't have much control over their limbs, their legs. You know, they get excited, everything moves around. And then as we get older, we start to control the body. I was watching one of our brothers, Brother Phap Luu, he had done an interview with a philosopher, Ian McGilchrist. And so I was watching this interchange with Ian McGilchrist and the actor John Cleese from Monty Python. And they were talking about creativity. And John Cleese said something interesting. It gave me a bit of an awakening moment. He said, if you ask a group of 8-year-olds, who is creative? Everyone raises their hand. But then if you ask a group of 11-year-olds, who is creative? Maybe half of them raise their hand. And if you ask a group of maybe 15, 16-year-olds, who is creative? Everyone looks around to see who the weirdo is. I'm repeating the words that he said. And it's like, what happens to us that makes this openness, this sense that we're not limited by this body, as it were, that you might say is creativity or whatever you want to call it, that we suddenly just become bound and contained within this flesh. You know, we go from this expansive openness, and the world is a vast experience, like a stream of awareness just going on, to this boundedness with limitations, boundaries. You know, this is my body, this is your body. So how does that happen from the newborn child into the adult? So meditation is a way of freeing us from that concept and seeing that actually we are not merely just this body, but we also have bodies outside of our body. And for example, when we go on a Zoom call, we're not there with that person, but somehow our image is transmitted. And that's just a technical example. We are breathing the air that has been breathed for countless generations. That is a body outside the body. These mountains, you know, we can say, yeah, the body outside the body is also a continuation body. We know that here at Deer Park, this land was used by the Peace Corps. At one point it was a naturalist camp, nudist camp. There were SWAT teams here practicing. And so this land has many bodies. And those bodies are continuation bodies of those who were here before us as well. So the body outside the body can also be a continuation body of the land. We living on it, we receive the land. The land is also a body outside the body. It is at every moment changing us, growing, nourishing us, helping us to change, evolve, and grow. But also we know that through quantum mechanics, that it's possible for example, quantum particles to have a spin, even at a distance, that is linked. There's no apparent communication between them. And if the spin of one changes, the spin of the other also changes. So when Tai would talk about the body outside the body, he would say, there are many, many examples of how we are not limited merely by this body. We just, because we have this nervous system and we see our hand and we can move it, and we think, wow, because of this illusion of control, we think, well, this is my body. But actually, we see that by our way of mindful walking, by our way of speaking, our way of listening, we are actually deeply interconnected, and we are affecting one another. Even I'm standing here giving a talk, by looking at you, and you're changing the Dhamma talk. It is evolving by a smile or a look or whatever, right? It's a non-self experience. So, body outside the body means we let down the boundaries. We no longer see that just this body is me, but actually I am not limited by this body. And so that we also have a touching the earth practice, which helps us to become free from the idea of a separate self, that this body is me. So we practice, this body is not me, it is not mine, it is not myself. So any way in which we think we possess this body, we practice to let go of that concept. And by doing that, then we start to see, like I'm very aware that, more than a decade of just listening to Thai's Dhamma talk, in some sense I'm just reborn by Thai's, Thai's teaching. And whoever that person was who came to the monastery in 2003 to become a monk, it's not that that person has completely disappeared, but I become a body outside the body, right? Also a continuation body. So we can see this overlap. Continuation body can include, in the same sense of the Dharmabody of the Buddha, it can include the words, the actions. Body outside the body means it can also be continuation, but it can also be simultaneous. So it has the aspect of simultaneity, that we are everywhere around the world. These past 2 weeks, tens of thousands of people have been gathered in Glasgow to try to do something about the climate crisis, to continue this process of transforming our habit energies as individuals, as corporations, as nations. And we know that one person alone cannot do very much. We need bodies outside of the body. We need many bodies to be able to do the work that needs to be done. to transform the situation, to try to keep the heating of the earth below 1.5 degrees Celsius, for example. In order for that to happen, so we don't condemn future generations to a kind of hellish existence on this planet, we need to work together. We need to realize the body outside the body. Because no one person can do it alone. Even we work yourself to the point of exhaustion. Every second is used to try to affect changes in climate policy. It will not be enough. Unless you realize this, you get this insight. So Christiana Figueres, who has come many times to Plum Village and has been supported by Thai and also by many of our sisters and brothers, she is there in the conference, trying to pin nations and governments down to a more strict limit on the emission and the use of fossil fuels, the phasing out of fossil fuels. Not waiting till 2026, but till 2023. We need an update, and it needs to be real, not theoretical. But she cannot do it alone. She needs the support of the whole Sangha. And some of our brothers and sisters have gone to there as well. And through their guided meditations, their look of love and understanding, they're helping the people who are trying to do that work. So they see this is the insight of the body outside the body. It's not enough by ourselves. So these are all related. The body outside the body, the Sanghabody, Dharmabody, human body. They're not separate. Okay. Sixth body is the Dharma-realm body, Dhamma-dhatu. So in the Dhamma-dhatu, usually this is written with a lowercase. So dharma here means a phenomena. And dhatu is like a field, or a realm. So we have our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And our eye is in contact with sights. And that gives rise to eye consciousness, right? Our ear is in contact with sounds, and that gives rise to sound consciousness. And so forth, the nose, tongue, body, and mind. So it's 6 senses, 6 objects of sense, and 6 consciousnesses. So it makes 18. So when we chant the Heart Sutra, or the Insight, the Sutra, the heart of the insight that brings us to the other shore, we talk about the 18 realms, and that's what all the phenomena is contained within those 18, our 6 senses, the objects of senses, and our consciousness. So all of our experience is within those realms. And so when we talk about Dharma-realm body, we talk about all phenomena in the world that can be sensed through sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or mind. So it includes thinking and mind consciousness. So everything. So the Buddha has a Dharma-realm body. And that is a whole of experience, without exception. So in this way, like I shared, we learn the Dhamma by getting in touch with these 18 aspects of experience, the sense organs, sense objects, sense consciousnesses. And we see that we are present in every sense organ, in every sense object. So every flower, every sound of the raven croaking, every flavor of the carrot is in the Dharma-realm body, and it is not separate from our body. It is a part of us. So the whole of experience is also us. That is the insight, without exception. So going from the human body, the Dharmabody, Sanghabody, continuation, body outside the body. Now we extend it to everything in the universe. Everything in the cosmos is also a body of the Buddha. And that means that everything can be a teacher and can give us insight, depending if we look at it as the Dharma-realm body. It means we're not attached to it, we don't grasp after it, but we see it in its impermanence, non-self nature. And the last body Thầy proposes is the true nature of the Dharma-realm body. It means unconditioned nirvana. So this is, we can say, the historical dimension in which time and space are present. Experience is present. This is the unconditioned, the ultimate dimension of the Buddha body, which is which cannot be described in terms of quality or taste or perception. It is unconditioned. And we've already talked a lot about nirvana, so maybe I'll stop there for today. And please, if you like, you can use this as a meditation this week in your practice and see if you can observe these bodies in your own body, right? I think none of us will have difficulty recognizing we have a human body, but we might have difficulty accepting that the Buddha also had a human body. But we also have to see what is our Dhamma body? How are we nourishing, especially in terms of nutriment? Everything needs nutriment, and all of these bodies need nutriment. So how we know maybe how we're nourishing the human body, but how are we nourishing the Dhamma body? How are we nourishing our Sangha body? Are we taking care of it? It also means we know when the Sangha body is hurt or weak or ill, and how to take care of it, how to be a good caretaker, a good steward of the Sangha body. Our continuation bodies. We all have continuation bodies. We just don't see it sometimes. The body outside the body. We are all bodies outside the body of each other in some way, shape, or form. And the Dharma-realm body, the whole realm of sense experience, which is also our body. And the true nature of the Dharma-realm body, the unconditioned. So, good luck practicing with all of these wonderful bodies. And And David asked, and I realized that we hadn't maybe given you the sheet on the 51 mental formations. So I made copies today, so please, if you would like a copy, these are the, speaking around the Dharma-realm body, these are the kind of emotions and mental formations that are taught in Buddhist psychology. And there are traditionally 51, and Thai has also added many. He's updated the list. So you have it in Chinese, Vietnamese, Sanskrit, and English. So here you go.